Let's go live. Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. We are on time. Our tech's working. Life's good. Right? It's all good. My hair's kind of weird because I did, it's like sticking out in the back. It's so gorgeous in North Carolina today.
Oh, I was about to say that. That was something I was going to bring up, how beautiful
it is. Literally amazing. And, the way that it goes in my life is the longer I put working out off in a day, the less likely it happens, I think, for most people too. So I forced the run earlier, but I always put my hair back in this headband and a ponytail. And so now I've got this crazy look going. Well, hey, Naz, day 319. Let's go is right. That's totally awesome. Sweet accomplishment there, my friend. So yeah, exactly, David. Damn, you the man. That is a beautiful thing. Thank you. Welcome from India. Hopefully it's not the middle of the night there for you. We'll let people trickle in as we get started. But Jamie has questions for us. And as we were jumping on, we were saying how we're going to hopefully switch it up and, try to keep some good questions, new stuff, not the same old stuff. Hi, Darius from Cary. So Darius is in the Cary area, so he knows what an amazing day it is here in North Carolina. My husband's at a golf tournament all weekend. You should have seen this, man. Nice. Talk about regulating from within. I had to shout out to him on his way out. Regulate from within, my friend. I said, use our my affirmation. Use the affirmation. I'm one with the force is with me. He's so nervous. It's crazy how much anxiety he has. The man golfs, you hear me, 2 times a week, and this is a competition. So it's different. And last night they had like this dinner. It was really fancy schmancy. It was really fun. And they're having a dinner tomorrow night. So that'll be fun to go to. So, all right. Well, yeah.
Is that in Durham or in?
No, it's at Governor's Club. Okay. My husband Cosmis goes to, we're members at Governor's Club in air quotes. And he loves it there. He and all of his friends golf. But hey, Steven, thanks for the donation, my friend. Hey, AR, what's happening? Long time no see. Oh, Greg, thank you for the donation. Totally appreciate it. Okay. Yeah, Raleigh NC. That's exactly right. 919. Okay, so let's start with a theme for today, and then Jamie's gonna hit me with some questions. It was interesting before that, just real quickly. My husband had the TV on the other day, and Bill Gates was on answering questions about like the vaccine and COVID and all that jazz. And then the woman like switched gears to, what's happening in his relationship, because he has relationship issues surrounding seemingly, how that goes, sexual acting out behavior with other women. And it was really funny because he was like spot on with his answers for the questions surrounding vaccine research and his foundation. And then when the question switched to his personal life, he's stumbling and deflecting. That's exactly right, David. And he's like, tripping over his words. And my husband's like, what's going on right now? Like, he didn't know that it was slightly scandalous and they're getting divorced and all that. I'm like, he's not confident right now. I'm like, I know, absolutely. Yep, Naz. Okay, so here's the theme for today. And yes, you can definitely ask questions, Frank. So throw them in there and we will try to get to as many that are coming in here, and we have some prepared. Going through the comments this week, when I actually did comments a few different days, a theme that it's actually been there for a while. A theme that's been there for a little while is, how do I know if the sexual urges and the sexual feelings that I have, how do I know if those are hypersexuality and the calls for mood regulation, or if that is just my libido? So I wanted to focus on that for a minute, because that is a really, really good question. Like, how do you know? How do you know if you just feel sexual, or if it's actually part of a sex addiction or this mood regulation piece? So I'm going to stay there for a second. And this has come up with people that I've talked to too. And here's one thing, how I'm like, if you don't remember anything I talk about, just remember this one thing. The takeaway from today is that at the beginning of a porn brain reboot journey, even in the middle, it can be really difficult to be self-aware of when you're being called for a mood regulation, opposed to when it's actual just, sexual urges that are healthy, libido, opposed to you've been using these neural pathways where you go back to something that has to do with sex to help you decrease anxiety, try to get motivated for a day that might feel challenging to you. So it can be really, really tricky. And gaining more understanding and self-awareness, and then of course using that information and that knowledge to change something, is how you can move forward in developing a healthy libido and dousing that hypersexuality. And that's how you become healthy in terms of emotional regulation and sexuality. Okay, so what does that look like? What are we talking about here? So like when people wake up and they'll say that, they just feel sexual urges in the morning or in the middle of the night, likely if your brain is asleep, you didn't go from asleep to feeling sexual. Like we know from the video that I made on healthy sexuality, it takes time to build arousal. So if you go from 0 to 60, it's likely not the building of sexual arousal. It's likely a call for mood regulation. And if your brain's been using that mode for a really long time, every time you feel sexual, you have to break it down and analyze it and start getting aware of what's going on. So I made a video, and honestly, I don't remember if it was published yet, is that I made a video talking about turning sex off. Actually, it's not published yet. I think it's going off on Monday. Turning off all your sexual urges, a fast, a dopamine detox, a sexual dopamine detox for sure. Turning it all off so that you can turn it back on in a healthy way. Because when you turn it off and you don't follow any of those urges, you can see where they're leading you. And then you'll feel yourself flip-flopping across days because this will cycle. And so the idea is in the cycle, when you feel sexual urges, it's after the trigger when your brain is looking for dopamine. And we know that people stay in this journey and the hard part of it for a really long time because they'll entertain thoughts or they'll go on Instagram or you'll get a little dopamine drip going. But, likely if you just keep going back to porn and if you're masturbating all the time, you are not using your brain in a healthy libido way. Somebody put in a comment, it is so funny. It's so funny. This video link that's called Just Jerk Off. I was picking my kids up from school yesterday and I am in the high school parking lot. I had to pick up Fiona because Declan had a meeting. I was rolling. I couldn't, you should watch the video on YouTube. It is 13 years old. I didn't watch any other videos from the guy, but it's basically like this bad thing happened. And the kid jumps out and he's like, just jerk off. Wow. And it is so funny. Whoever shared it, it is literally it made my day because it's totally true. Like that is the pull of dopamine where it's like, oh no, this is hard. Instead of dealing with the hardness, just jerk off. So of course, that's what we don't want you to do. We want to go, okay, this is hard. Let's fix the hard thing. Okay. So Jamie, do you have a question for me? And then I'm going to read people's too here.
Tackling on top of that, RTS Beyond says, could you discuss some more about dealing with the easy button when it starts entering the subconscious sleep, but in the form of a fetish? Is this where the hijacker is trying to trick me?
Yeah, likely. If it's entering into your unconscious and, it's time for you to sleep. And especially if you feel like you're doing a really good job, if you have 319 days, like Naz does, that, if it's entering into your unconscious when you really do have a handle on the vigilance in your schedule and your structure in your conscious awake time, and then you find that now it's entering into your sleep, that definitely could be, the hijacker trying to pull you back in. This thing's tricky, man. It's going to try to suck you back in. That's why self-awareness is really important to build. And then knowing what action steps you're going to take once you become more self-aware. That's why this is a journey. It's a process, not an event. But it can be a cool one when you start to learn about yourself. And I promise I'll go back to that question in a minute. But you know how I'm on this journey every day of my life. Hard stuff happens. I try to sit with that hard thing for a minute. I don't sit around dwelling in it, but I move towards it. And I have had a couple really cool takeaways about myself in a few interactions this week. And the reason I want you to know that is because my knee-jerk reaction was to go, look at that person. Look what they just did. And instead, I framework shifted to, why are my buttons pushed right now? It's because this is something that I can work on in myself. And that's what this journey is. And that's what I'm talking about in self-awareness. So like, if you wake up and you're having urges and it's fetishes, you know a lot now being on this channel. Knowledge is power, and you are a powerful man. So now that you know that that's going to enter into your unconscious, you have to switch your thoughts. Do not entertain that, or you're dopamine dripping, which means you're going to be going down that slippery slope again. But if you are thinking about a fetish, and we've talked about this a few times here, but honestly, people email me every single day, like, I don't know what to do about this thing because I don't know how to get rid of it. Some fetishes are born out of trauma or some arousal templates, I'll say, because a fetish is really just a really ingrained arousal template, a thing you keep going back to because your brain finds it highly arousing. Many people's things that they go back to are born out of controlling something that happened to you when you're young, or something that you wanted, a basic fear or a basic desire. And that when we think about personality types, that can really enter in. So a fetish could be, you're interested in this thing because it's the thing you didn't get in your life, or it's the thing you did get in your life in terms of abuse or trauma. And it becomes a way to control the thing you wanted and couldn't get, or the thing you unfortunately had happened to you. So look for that in terms of the fetish. If that's not it, or you can't put your thumb on that, what you can think about is, how many times have you watched that act or that genre or whatever the fetish is? How many years? How many minutes? How many different varieties of it? How many times the same video? That is literally boring itself into your brain by cutting and grooving neural pathways. So those pathways are still there. So the way to make them go away is to not fire them up, and to create new neural pathways and fire them up minute by minute, day by day. That's why getting a project going, I know it's not the same as fetish porn, but if you get a, right, Jamie's like, definitely not. Get a project going and get interested in it and research it and think about it, and, you know, put your mind to that. We just got a huge hot tub for our backyard. I told Jamie this. It was a very good price. And I have a lot of teenagers, which have already told me they will be blocking it off on Friday nights. But my point about that is, there's this part of our yard that is just an atrocity that needs to be cleaned up and something done. So, you know, now we have this project of thinking about what we're going to do with this hot tub. You know, it's going to be like a month-long project of, we think about how to do the backyard, put this hot tub in, and, you know, things around that. And if you keep doing projects like that, so when that project gets done, I'll be on to another new project. I always have work projects going on. I always have personal projects going on. That's how you engage your life in a really healthy way, and you get dopamine. And I was just talking to someone, and then we'll move on to another question, but I was just talking to someone saying that the way you know you're getting healthier and the way you know you're moving through this journey is because you can feel yourself not swinging back and forth between that pendulum of needing to watch porn and feeling urges and cravings, and then feeling shame and low, you know, feeling that high and that low. When your nervous system evens out and you're in the middle, and even if you can feel it for some moments, you know you're moving in the right direction. And that's why getting these projects going where you're getting medium amounts of dopamine, not high amounts when you're consuming the easy button, and then none when you're not. Now you have medium amounts all the time, and life is good. What do you got there, Jamie?
So, Trevor says,
yeah,
David,
thank you for the donation. I totally appreciate that. I'm going to talk to you about David Goggins' book in a minute. So thank you. Go ahead, Jamie.
Trevor says, can we make the hijacker our friend?
So if someone hijacks your car, are you able to make that person your friend? The answer is no. They are literally hijacking your you can think of them as friendly. And I know some people have successfully used a strategy where they have befriended their hijacker to make it easier to connect with the needs of the hijacker. And, that is a powerful strategy, because if you haven't heard me say this before, the hijacker is your inner child. Basically, it's the younger version of yourself who didn't get his needs met, or he had problems that led him into pornography or sexual acting out. So if you can look upon the hijacker in a friendly way, but you can't make him your lifelong friend, because in some other people, I call it the hijacker. A lot of people refer to addiction as a hijacker, but it actually is, for many people, it's a sub-personality. So it's an addictive type of aspect of your personality. One of them has to be in charge. So you can't really, become lifelong friends with that hijacker, or that relationship gets too close and the discernment between the two of you is more difficult. And that's why I always say, you need to get the hijacker out of control, and you can't have him near you so that he doesn't want to get in control again. And when you realize it's the younger version of yourself who's wounded, when you heal your wounds through this Porn Brain Reboot journey, and that's how I've designed the program that I offer, to move you from thinking about what those traumas are, or dysfunction, or those imprints on your brain and those neural pathways that are being fired up, resolving them, and then getting new tools to develop new neural pathways. And so that in the end, your friend, you've seen the movies where like the friend dissipates and walks off into the, into like in Bagger Vance. What a great movie. And Will Smith is Bagger Vance, and he just walks off into the night, because he's no longer needed. And that's how you want to envision the hijacker, that he's been with you for a really long time because you've needed him to keep you feeling safe and to allow you to exist in a crazy world that doesn't feel safe to you. So once you grow yourself up emotionally, learn how to regulate yourself internally instead of externally, develop healthy sexuality, he just doesn't need to be around. So you can gently and lovingly watch him walk off into the mist, for sure.
All right, here's another question. David, I was trying to find your question. So it says, some days when I'm grinding, I don't get tired, but I find I need to go to bed. Is there any brain damage if repressed amount of sleep? Right now, I'm sleeping 6 hours every day.
6 hours is not too bad. So if it was 4 hours, then yes, that does have an accumulative effect on your brain, because your brain is the healthiest when it's rested. Rest is one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves. And and I talked about the grind last week, because this week's been a beautiful week. I barely worked it. I went to the mountains with my friends. I don't know. It's been a weird week. I mean, I work a lot, but I probably worked a perfect amount instead of a grinding amount that I have felt myself doing. And when you are grinding, you're using your brain too much. And even if you don't get tired or don't feel tired, your brain needs recovery time. It's actually called alpha recovery. So one of the most powerful coaching strategies that you can use is, for every hour and 15 minutes of work, you give your brain 15 minutes to integrate and to recover. And it can be switching gears in work, but you don't really want to produce or consume anything. You just want to let that energy come down. And if you do that, your brain will be in a much healthier spot by the end of the day. And then 6 hours of sleep can be refreshing. It's better to get closer to 7 or 8. And I know that's difficult for many people. And especially if you've been hitting the easy button for a long time, the sleep cycle is going to be messed up, and that will be extra challenging. But, getting a consistent 6 hours of sleep every night can keep you in a healthy spot. And your brain will be fine. But if you could, squeak out another hour and actually move through those sleep cycles a little bit more, that would be better. But 6 is 6 is good. And just to talk about, I'm from Buffalo, New York. Do you know that, David? And I honestly never finished the David Goggins book, but maybe I will dip back into it for you, because it was triggering me in terms of, all the abuse and violence that he underwent as a child. And of course, the message is a really powerful one, that, he was able to rise above the generational trauma that his father inflicted on him, and his mother didn't have the strength to be able to save him. It's pretty wild, because I'm not from downtown Buffalo where he lived, but everything he talked about is pretty interesting. And I will finish that book for you, because I have often thought to myself, I should get back into it and finish, because I'm probably at the part where there's lots of good takeaways instead of continuing to hear about the traumas that he suffered. But very good book.
So I have another question from Mathis. I don't quite understand. Is it bad to masturbate, or is it okay? Is it okay when I watch normal YouTube videos, just women talking about stuff? I do this because I feel less alone. I know you talk about, creating a schedule, but I know some people have emailed and said, okay, I'm on a schedule, but I can't actually do it without watching something. So
yeah. And no, you, in the end, you don't want to, feel the need or have to, the compulsion. What we're talking about here is compulsive masturbation. That word compulsive is the big defining factor in this discussion. Compulsion means you feel a deep need to do it, and then you have to. So that's not a healthy habit. And I know on the channel, people have put a link to other doctors saying, masturbation's fine, but they're talking about masturbation for people who don't have a compulsion to masturbate. So those are very different brains. So the difference is, if you don't have a compulsion to masturbate, then you've grown up with a healthy brain across your lifetime. You're not using the neural pathways that someone who has been masturbating for a really long time. So the point is, like, if you're not consuming, the easy button, but now you're on YouTube, you're just swapping one out for the other, and it's a little lower level, but your brain is still dependent upon the dopamine hit from going to a video, which is objectifying another person. You're using that person for an object to get a dopamine hit. And in the end, what that does is it creates shame in people, plus it keeps your brain locked in that cycle of having to go back to something to regulate itself. Regulating from outside, not from within. The goal is to regulate from within and then go be with a honey when you're feeling sexual, and actually start experiencing sex with another person. Of course, it depends on age and all of that stuff, but that's the goal, because when you do that, then you are full and complete from the inside, and you can move on and not have a compulsion to masturbate.
Thank you, Warren, for the $15. That's awesome. We do appreciate that. I do have another question with regards to compulsion. Jim, I have been, objectification. Jim, I've been working on NoFap for over 50 days, but I noticed my sexual objectification has increased in this result of NoFap. What can I do to address it?
Yeah, so this is a great question, because...
And is sexual objectification and porn addiction alike?
Yeah, they are. So again, if you stop hitting the easy button, going back into the screen, now your brain's going, yo, dude, where's my hit of dopamine? Where's my dopamine flood? And then your brain will start looking for it elsewhere. So like talking about it showing up in the middle of the night in your dreams or in your unconscious, it might show up when you're out in the world, and now you are objectifying women with, body parts. Fiona and I, my daughter and I, got into a discussion the other day because she was talking about all this terrible stuff. She was literally inciting me that happens at her high school. Like, and her point was, and about how young men are treating young women. And then we're talking about young women sexualizing themselves, and the cycle goes round and round and round. And so this is part of it, because then when you go in the world and you're just objectifying women as, again, getting dopamine hits, little hits, because you haven't been getting the flood in the screen. I'm in the middle of reading Dopamine Nation. If anybody's reading that or seen it, it's an amazing book. And not coincidentally, the opening chapter is called Our Masturbation Machines. And it's a really good book. If everybody's reading it, put it in there. And I plan on making more videos on some of the concepts that she talks about. It's a psychiatrist who's talking about, as a society, all we're doing is looking for dopamine in screens in particular, and, looking for in Instagram and social media and all of that. And very, very interesting. But talking about, isn't it great, Night Whisper? It's a good book and I'm really enjoying it. And I thought, I actually saw one review on Amazon said, like, don't pick up this book because she talks about sex addiction. And I'm like, this is the conversation that literally needs to be had. I am probably the only person who's so psyched that the through line of this book is sex addiction, because that is where our brains are going these days. But getting back to my point about what we're talking about here in terms of objectification, in one of her chapters, when she's talking about the way out of these types of addictions, it is to identify the strongest way. And I've been saying this for a long time: create self-awareness, identify what your triggers are, and run, don't walk in the opposite direction. That's what the pivot plan that I talk about is. Knowing what's triggering you, what your response is, which it's going towards the screen, and finding a healthy way, and then creating new routines and habits that don't put you in the position that you are triggered, changing things. And I've talked to a few people this week, really amazing conversations, people saying, you know what, I used to always do this and I didn't get, it's part of this whole sex thing for me. And now I'm doing this other thing. And, that's pretty cool to go, I'm actually only going to the gym to check people out. Like, some people think they're going to work out, but then people are like, I realize, like, I'm barely there to work out. I'm actually just there to check people out. So then that becomes a real strong realization, and they can move away from that and go somewhere else. That is what I would like for you all to do. Let me see. So, getting married today, exercise machina. Congratulations, my friend. That is a big step. And I hope you have an amazing wedding and an amazing marriage too. Okay, what else we have going on here? Taffy, 61 years since abused, and porn is soothing. I know. And I there's no way to talk about abuse in an easy way. But I'm here to tell you that if you look at the abuse, and especially if you can forgive the people who abused you, understanding that they had a much lower capacity to be good to people, right? The old adage from Louise Hay, if you don't know Louise Hay's work, who she was abused, actually, her backstory, she's passed now, but she created Hay House Publishing. If you don't know her work, it's all about forgiveness and being able to understand that people who abused you didn't have the capacity to be good to themselves or to you. And she says, hurt people hurt people. And knowing that, you can look at that abuse, learn from it, and become the person who doesn't do that. And then porn won't have to soothe that wound. We all need to look at our wounds and be able to go, that is a wound for me. And that's what I'm talking about when I tell you I've done that a couple times this week. And because I've been trying to create more time and space, which is ironic, because every time I tell you all to do something, I'm like, I've been avoiding time and space. So more time and space for me. And then I'm like, oh, that's uncomfortable. But you always tell people, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So, and I was telling my friend Chanel, I'm like, yep. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, just sitting around feeling the pain, moving towards it. What are you doing? But when we move towards that pain, then it relaxes the hold on you. And you deserve that, because when abuse affects you for 61 years, that abuser has moved on, and probably hasn't thought about the pain that you are in. When you think about it, perpetuates your pain. And again, going back to, we can only control what we can control, which is us. And so by creating self-awareness and taking new action steps, Super Sunny D, you have a bad connection? I think we are pretty good. Everybody else okay there? Jamie, what do you got there?
So I've got one from Mark Dixon. Can you give me an update on the status of your original favorite patient in regards to dealing with pornography and personal recovery? He had asked how you got into this business. Mm-hmm. So I sent him a link to your story and how you got into this.
Yeah, perfect. I absolutely can, because I spoke with him this week, and some of my thoughts are coming from, and some of my videos, honestly, too, are coming from some of my interactions with him. So update. This is the real deal. So listen up on this, is that this is a process. So he's doing amazing. He's moved through a lot of the beginning stuff. Like, he's moved through that a long time ago, which is why I'm here, because I'm like, okay, this finally worked for him, but he still has growth to do. But this is when I share with you, and I can get into specifics in a second. When I share with you that this is a journey, and I always talk about it as the work, but then I say, I back up and say, it doesn't have to be work, because once you get into this journey and you realize you can actually make your life better because of it, then the work becomes fun. That is the work of humanity. Like, we're here to be the best versions of ourselves. So in particular for him, what he has going on is being able to level up, create some new things in his work, that using his brain in a new way. A really big thing that we focused on this week is being able to share his feelings in a healthy way with his partner, because they've moved through this journey, but then repairing relationships can be really tricky when there's been some heavy duty stuff in the mix. And this was one question he asked me, which I think is maybe an indication of where he's at and everybody can learn from. He's like, okay, I don't know how to do that. What do you mean by share my feelings? I literally don't know what you mean. Give me examples. And of course, like, that is easy for me when I go, just share your feelings with her. He's like, I don't get it. Give me an example. And so, because he's like, he still has some urges, but they're hardly ever, but he's trying to run from those urges. And I'm like, you can't run from them. You have to do what I'm talking about. You have to look at them and you have to figure them out, because you're practically, got this thing contained and gone. So don't ignore the last little pieces here for you, because this work isn't fully done. And I'm sure this will be relatable to some of you, is that when his work gets stressful, then he feels triggered, and that's what the urges are. And he's recognized that now. He sees his whole pattern that he was in before, and it's all gone now. It's just this residue when things get really stressful. So a key is to share those stressors and how he's feeling with his partner, so that he's not sitting in that space of being triggered. But this is the part. He's like, I'm supposed to just go, I thought about this sexual act and I've thought about that sexual act. I'm supposed to tell my partner that. I'm like, no, you don't need to share those nitty gritties. But what you could say is, I'm feeling stressed out and I'm feeling kind of weak right now. And then you make sure you call me, which is why we talked, because that's how he was feeling. And, that's amazing, because having a support system in place, you don't have to work on this thing for the whole rest of your life. This is the vigilance. And actually, this is what he said. He was getting a little frustrated with me. But then I said, remember, my job is to lovingly challenge this thought system, because he's like, I'm doing all the right things, all the things you always talk about. I exercise, I've got projects, I'm this, that, I eat well, this, that, the other thing. And I said, yeah, except for you are not communicating with your partner. So all that triggers and stress is in the dark. And we know this thing thrives in the dark. So you have to tell me, because then we shed some light on it. And then you have to tell your partner if you're going to repair that, because that repair and betrayal and trust hasn't been repaired. But when he goes and he does that, then there's going to be repair. So like he's in a really, really, really good place, like amazing good things happening. But I think there's always things that you can learn once you get in this journey. Hasn't consumed any pornography, hasn't done any sexual acting out, has totally eliminated masturbation, like all the things that are really hard that honestly he didn't think he could ever do. And the thing with that story, this is a true story that this got me into this. He went to so many other professionals and got worse. So like the fact that all that 90-day first stuff has been gone since the 90 days, and that, and I've hardly talked with him. So he's doing great, but then, I'm in the loop for support, but he went to all these professionals, tens of thousands of dollars, and literally got worse. Some of them enabled it, saying that porn's no big deal. Others are like, you probably should stop this, but, go to SA groups for the rest of your life, which that wasn't a thing. And I did say to him, like, you might want to consider a group, because a group and camaraderie, but I'm sure a lot of you can understand this feeling. The idea of having to go to Sex Addicts Anonymous group for the rest of his life does not resonate with the new person that he's become. And that's why 12-step groups, although they can be really powerful for people, they're not always, a great fit. But I've worked with other people too who have joined different men's groups that help them to keep thinking about what they're thinking and what they're feeling, not thinking in a negative way, in a positive way. And the reason I say that is because when people get sucked into this habit, it's avoiding thoughts and feelings. So when you have other, brothers from another mother to talk to about your feelings and your thoughts, which is scary. I want to say one more thing about this too, is that, that's why there's lots of books on this concept. So don't be mad at me when I am about to share it with you, is the idea that people are looking to complete their masculine and feminine energy. When we are balanced, we are, and I don't even necessarily think about them as masculine and feminine. I think of them as being able to be well-rounded and balanced as a person, but we'll just use the masculine and feminine to be easy to think about it. So, thinking about masculine and feminine is going towards being able to share your feelings. And actually the same person said to me, I was taught not to share my feelings and thought. If I shared a feeling and thought, I got hit. So I have learned to deal with all tough stuff by myself. And I'm like, that's not healthy. So I know you learned that, going back to the multi-generational junk. I know you learned that, but that's not what you want to do for the rest of your life. And that's definitely not what you want to teach your family. So, and then challenging that thought system, he's like, yeah, maybe I can share my feelings, but then that rounds out that energy within him. He can feel, actually, my husband was saying this too. He's like, and my husband is totally, he would destroy anybody who messes with him. And sometimes he errs on that side, but then he's like, I know I'm tough, but I'm soft and gooey on the inside. I'm like, oh, you're like a marshmallow. And, but his point was that he can, because we practice this stuff so much, he can tell me how he's feeling about things, like his anxiety that has resided in so much weirdness during this golf thing. It's unbelievable. But, and that rounds out his energy and makes him whole. Okay, let's see what people have going on here. I'm just going to pop around. If you have another question, I'm going to see. Oh, Delta Phos B, Frank. I will share about Delta Phos B because I know that that's a really interesting concept for people. And this goes to what I'm talking about my original favorite client, is that Delta Phos B, basically, like in one of the videos I talk about it, the video that is entitled Delta Phos B, it is a transcription factor. So what that means is it's kind of like concrete. And we know this from science, is that those neural pathways that you've been using forever, for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years for some people, Delta Phos B kind of lays some concrete down on those neural pathways, making it much more difficult to have that neural pathway completely go away. So this is the point about my favorite client, my original client, is that he's aware that that pathway is still there, and it only pretends to fire up under extreme stress. So he needs to avoid extreme stress and share that with someone when it is trying to fire itself back up. The reason it starts firing itself back up is because of delta phos-B. And in the video that I made, I talk about, and actually Dopamine Nation, she talks about this too, is that even though that neural pathway is there and it's weeded over, so if you envision like, you know, a concrete pathway that has cracks in the concrete and the weeds come over, but the concrete's still there underneath all that weeds, all those weeds, it's still there. But your brain can make new ones that go around that pathway. And I always go from here to here. And when you make those new neural pathways, and if you don't go down that one, you don't get to the concrete anymore. It stays weeded over. So you don't have to be hypervigilant. You don't have the thoughts anymore. You don't have urges. You've created this like awesome life. And now you're setting goals. Another thing that client said to me was that he's really excited about setting all these future goals. And he's really excited about the future more than he's ever been before because his mind wasn't on the future. His mind was stuck in this cycle. And so when you're stuck in this cycle, you're just in, you know, round and round and round. And he's like, a really cool thing that's come out of this is, you know, I'm building things and I'm moving forward. That's because the delta phos-B is underneath those weeds and he's using this new neural pathway over and over and over. But under extreme stress, that pathway starts to tingle just a little. But if he doesn't take it, it stays weeded over. And that's what delta phos-B does. So that's the idea of that for some people. If you've really built that pathway in for a really long time, it is, you know, quote unquote, irreversible in that pathway, but it doesn't mean you're taking that pathway. So I would say that the changes are definitely reversible because you're taking a new pathway. So if you don't take that pathway anymore, it might be there. But what happens in your brain and your body and your mind and your life is totally reversible. You become the new, better version of yourself. So it makes you more susceptible to go back to the old ways. Another thing that client told me is that when he avoids all the other addictions, poly addiction or multi addiction is definitely part of this. And we've talked about this before. When he avoids all the other stuff, it's no sweat for him to stay away from sexually acting out. He has to avoid marijuana, which he would use frequently to adjust his mood, and alcohol. And those are the two main ones. And so when he stays out of that, then there's no urges. But if he uses alcohol and marijuana, then those urges, that delta phos-B fires back up.
That's really interesting.
And Vishruth, if I'm saying it right, I know it seems overwhelming. It really does. But that's why I'm a practical kind of person. I want you to know what's going on in there. And I want you to know the truth. I'm never going to sugarcoat things. But what I want to tell you about the overwhelming piece is that when you focus on what you want to create in your life and you don't put all the energy on what you're trying to avoid, the overwhelm goes away. And you have to get over that first hurdle. And then when you get over that first hurdle and you really get on purpose, that's why all my videos are like, get on purpose. Purpose is the thing that anchors you in and the overwhelm goes away. But it's very overwhelming conceptually at the beginning. That's why I like to take all concepts and make them into an action step that you can actually go do. So the takeaway from that is if you use a lot of marijuana and alcohol, reduce them, eliminate them, or at least figure out what's going on with you and the cycle, because we know that other disinhibiting, behaviors and substances can really lead you. That's the takeaway on that one. The takeaway is just start changing things, figuring out what's happening to you and change something, but do it categorically. That's how she talks about it in Dopamine Nation. You can make physical and mental changes, but really figuring out like what's happening with you and making those changes, that's the most powerful way that you'll be able to move on. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And then of course we have programs. When you join our programs and you're with other people and with me, I did my 90-day group from the mountains with some of my peeps on Tuesday morning. It was amazing. I always feel bad when I go over like in those groups because I know some people have to bounce and get back to work. Everybody stayed and we were having such a wonderful conversation. And then everybody leaves feeling better about the journey and, taking the overwhelm out of it. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Jamie.
That's fine. Thank you, Simon, for the donation. Is there any way to manage having hormonal reactions without delving into triple X fetish thoughts? Sometimes I feel attracted to certain types of women, but I try to resist my feelings of lust.
Yeah, this is a really good thought too. And remember when I just told you a minute ago that I'm going to spit straight facts and do it lovingly, is that, it's likely not a quote unquote hormonal reaction. It's likely you firing up that lust dopamine hit pathway that is cemented with delta phos B. That's more likely than it's just a hormonal reaction to looking at certain types of people. So here's the action step for this one. Think about the triple X that you've been watching for a really long time. This is what I was saying before about fetishes. They come because you've cemented this pathway with that thing. They get linked to each other. Dopamine is a motivational and a linking neurotransmitter. It links the idea of pleasure and the feelings of pleasure to a particular thing. So if you've been firing up certain types of women and watching them for any amount of time, you've linked your brain and that reaction to those types of women. And that's very common. Like that's probably the most common thing. And in recovery, one of the strategies is, do you have a type? So sometimes that type can be healthy. So you find a partner who you enjoy that is the type that you find the most arousing. There's that's a healthy thing. Like there's reasons that people are attracted to each other. It's because of that healthy aspect of that. But if you've been putting that into your brain and linking it for any amount of time, that might have started as a real arousal template, but definitely got cemented from watching it. And in the extreme, we know that when people find themselves watching fetishes that they are freaked out about and do not resonate with them in any way, that is the dopamine linking to that actor, genre, or person. And actually, next week, I'm going to put up the podcast of Noah Church that he and I recorded last week. And in there, he talks about it that we know from the science that this is happening to more and more people, that their brains are getting linked to particular types of porn. And that is the most arousing thing for a person, but it wasn't developed out of something natural. It developed out of the consumption. So if that's the case, you stop the consumption and you don't fire those pathways up anymore if that's not something. But we know too, I made the video on lust and people are like, whoa, you struck a chord, Dr. Trish, because it resonated with people. Lust in itself is not a healthy thing to do. And not my words, but people have put on comments on the channel, lusting after people's creepy. Other people can pick up on that. And creepy is not my word, but it's not healthy. It's, when you are just getting dopamine hits from looking at people's body parts. This is what that was my point about my discussion with Fiona. Fiona's like, anybody should be able to show any body part because they're just body parts. That's coming from a, sexually healthy teenager who's doesn't have dopamine hits from looking at body parts. I'm like, babe, that would be great if for thousands of years, people were conditioned to look at body parts for dopamine hits. And yeah, I know this has been going on forever, but it doesn't mean that it's a healthy thing for, you or anybody else.
All right. So I have a question from Mark. I have an STD and I'm not able to have a healthy sexual relationship because I'm scared of giving this to my partner. This is the reason I turn to porn and have an addiction. How can I stop if I'm not able to have sex?
Yeah, this is a great question. Is that those two things don't go together, and you can have sex. And I know people say, condoms don't work or protection doesn't work. I know there's extreme examples. And we talked about that with someone last week, right, in the comments that, some people have had to have surgeries that now affect their penis. So like, if there's a real medical or underlying or emotional, or if there's a real reason that things are challenging, the two don't go together. Like the fact that it's more challenging for you to have a sexual relationship in the real world does not default you to pornography. And I want everybody to know that, because we get a ton of emails about this too. I'm in a religious order and I am not allowed to have sex with another person. That's why I watch porn. Porn is less healthy for you than having sex with another person. I know it goes against cultures and I know it goes against religions, and I'm sure that'll probably frustrate some people, but that's just the truth of it. So just because you can't have sex doesn't mean you go to porn. It means you figure out how to have a healthy sexual relationship. And I think when you just look at it that way, you just take porn out of the mix. Now what do? You have to problem solve it in a different way. And if you want your brain and your body and your relationships and your life to be healthy for the rest of your life, that's the direction you have to go in. So you can use condoms, you can figure it out in a different way. And what I love about life is that there's literally a partner out there for all of us. And there's when you stop looking for that, I think that's when it's like, it's a giving up on trying to create what you really want and just going, you know what, I'll just take porn for the rest of my life. And porn's damaging your brain, first of all. It's not healthy for you. It's wasting your most precious resource, time, when you could be on purpose doing something that you love and giving to the world in a really valuable way and having a ton of fun doing it. And that's what I want for people. I'm going to answer, just because of the super cute hands up emoji, I think it's Sarab Singh. Just quickly answer his questions about, I know a lot of people have this question. Please tell us about how sharing intimate pictures in a long distance relationship, or actually I could probably show it here myself, or fantasizing about the good times affect the brain on a reboot journey. This is a really great question. And the answer to it is, if it's foreplay in a current healthy relationship that you can't see that person because of jacked up COVID-19 and, all that, then that's fun. But recognize you're using images as a replacement for that person. You don't want to get in a habit of that. What you want to get in a habit of is being with that person. But if it's foreplay towards that, then that's fun and engaging. So again, the action step here is it foreplay or is it something else? If it's euphoric recall, that's what fantasizing about the good times with a person you're no longer with, or even if you're with the same person, but you're fantasizing about what you used to do 25 years ago, you're fantasizing about what you did with 20-year-old her, not 45-year-old her. And that is not being present with your current 45-year-old partner, because I know that's an issue for a lot of people. So that's just euphoric recall of the good times. And actually going back to my original client, he had a lot of images of his partner, and coming to grasps with that was part of his journey, because he had trained his brain to even observe his own sexual encounters, not to participate in them. And so when he realized that, he's like, wow, that was a pattern of mine too that developed over the years. So my point for Sarab is that don't get yourself into that, where now you want to be a fourth wall consumer in your own sexual relationship. That happens to a lot of people. Stay in it, present in the experience. And of course, if you're sharing things like, as you lead up to being together, then that's cool, foreplay. But if it's a replacement, don't do that, because that will not be good for your brain. What it does is it trains your brain. I get dopamine hits from images, not I get dopamine from sex by being with my partner. I get dopamine from images and fantasy, which isn't healthy. You want to get it from experience and connection, pleasure, happiness, joy, all that good stuff in the present.
All right. This is, thank you for the donation. Is it Velpav? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I've been on NoFlab since 2018 and it's been life-changing. However, how do you prevent nightfall and lack of sleep while practicing retention?
It's what I've already started to share, and I've talked about this before, but what happens in the night, this is what people don't understand. So here's the takeaway. It's a concept, but then I'll give you an action step. What happens to you during sleep comes from the way you used your brain in the day. So understanding that is really powerful. And so like I've already shared, Give your brain a break every hour and 15 minutes for 15 minutes. You'll thank me. When you start doing that, you will literally thank me. It's a game changer. That's basically the thing that I've done this week. And I feel like I've hardly worked because I've just given my brain more space. I haven't been 5 minutes late for a million meetings. And my brain's like, whoa, I don't have to be all hyper vigilant because I'm always late for everything right now. My brain's going, this is cool. I've got a meeting in a half hour. Beautiful. Like I've got a little time to chill. So give your brain space in the day, because then you will move through the sleep cycle better, assuming you're not hitting the easy button still. Because if you hit the easy button and you give your brain this dopamine flood before bed, you've taught it the way that you go to sleep is by getting the dopamine hit at bedtime. And, again, remembering, thinking about your brain as a puppy or an old dog, right? Either a puppy that you can train tricks, or an old dog that's going to take a little bit longer. So if you've been taking the edge off before bed and you've been just overusing your brain all day, then change those things. Those are the action steps. Give yourself more breaks, balance your brain in the day. And, that's what I said. My balance went away and I've already taken the action steps. And I already feel so much better. It's amazing. Like just my brain hurt because I was just, grinding. And now that the grind's kind of gone down, my brain can recover, and then I get better sleep, and then I'm able to chill a little bit, in the evening, and then things come online in the night.
Is sexting unhealthy?
That's the same thing that I just talked about. So, especially if you're sexting randos, no sexting random people. Like, if it's just for dopamine hits, you have to realize that. That's why a really big takeaway from today is look at all that stuff. Why? That's what I challenge you to think about. Why are you sexting someone? If the why is to entertain your brain a little bit and get this dopamine hit and feel good for a little bit, that's not healthy. If it's because you have a beautiful partner who you haven't seen in 6 months because they're in Germany and you're keeping things spicy, that's foreplay for when you get to be back together. That's a healthy way to use it. 99% of the time when we talk sexting, it's not healthy because it's just giving yourself, it's like checking Instagram or even checking your emails. We know that all of those behaviors are just going to your phone for a little dopamine hit to avoid your life. And I found myself almost doing it. What did I do today? Where I'm like, why am I doing this? Like I was about to pull something up and they're like, I'm supposed to be working right now. If I pull that thing up, and I've trained myself to share this before, I think, like, even if I want to look something up, which normally it's brain stuff or addiction stuff. Yeah, I know. That I will do that at the end of my day because I train myself to get lots of good stuff done. So I've done everything. So at the end of the day, I go, okay, now I can look this up and, entertain myself a little. But, sexting is generally you're just, you're running from what you're supposed to be doing at the moment and you're trying to get a little hit.
Here's a question from AR. How do I know if the frontal lobe is recovering or if I am lazy?
Okay, well, if your frontal lobe isn't recovering, if you don't feel any different, then you need to do something because it can and will recover. The more things you do, the more it's going to recover. So no one's just lazy, right? That's an excuse. That's going, you know what? Maybe I'm just lazy. That's not the way that is. Yes, different people have different capacities, but we all have our interests in us and we all are compelled to act in a certain way. So finding that way that's healthy for you, like if you're just lazy and you're unmotivated and there's nothing that excites you and you don't want to go do something and, then your frontal lobe might not be functioning properly. It might still be just in this slow, hypo-aroused manner. And especially if any of the stuff we're talking about resonates, going to fantasy or you're getting dopamine hits somewhere, you're giving your brain dopamine from being lazy. In Dopamine Nation, she talks about, and it's interesting because I don't do this, I'm kind of the opposite, about how much more time people spend on the couch now than they did 40 years ago. How much more sedentary we are as people. And I'm sedentary when I work, but I'm working. And so like, if you're just laying around on the couch, you've taught your brain to do that. The way out is to get your action up go work out. The number one thing you can do is work out. Force yourself to do it. That's why I forced the run today, even though it's gave me crazy hair here, right? And yesterday at the best time, I worked out for like an hour and change. I was boxing with the general and amazing, just so fun and hard. And in Dopamine Nation 2, she talks about the I made one video, the pain pleasure, forget what she calls it. I called it the pain pleasure paradox, because it is like when you push through push-ups that are hard, you flood your brain with dopamine. That's why you feel so good after a workout. That's why sprinting through my neighborhood, which is very hilly. And I was thinking, a thought occurred to me, because I'm always telling people, who cares what other people think about you? I'm like, oh my God, like I definitely look like the middle-aged woman sprinting through, like in my mind, it's a sprint. It's probably slow. So then I thought to myself, nobody else is out here. I didn't see one neighbor running. So I'm the one out here running and nobody else is. And that's why my brain gets all fired up. So you are not just lazy. If you feel lazy, it's because something's off. But I want to tell you one more thing too, is that, you know how I talk about the brain sensing headband? Oh, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this before we get off. My website, drtrishleigh.com, has been rejuvenated. It's gotten a facelift, and there's a tweak or two that still needs to be done, but I encourage you to go look at our new version of our website. We've moved the porn programs over there for easy access, because I know the new website is very difficult to find because it's a brand new website. drtrishleigh.com has been around for a long time. So you can find those programs there easily. So check it out, because I am really proud of it. And my web developer did a really great job. But what I was going to say about that is I've created a $49 program that teaches you how to use the brain sensing headband. And it costs, I think it's $212 right now. I looked it up the other day, with the discount code that you can find on Dr. Trish Leigh. Anywhere it says 15% off the headband, if you click it, that's a link to the headband's code that in the checkout at the very end, it comes up the discount. But this is what I wanted to say, because all the people who have purchased the headband, and it's directly from the manufacturer, you can measure if your frontal lobe is improving. You have a graph that shows you at the beginning of this journey, your brain's, not in the calm focus mode. It's in the pendulum swinging mode. And then over time, yes, it's going to ebb and flow, but over time, you will be in the calm focus zone where your brain is making and enjoying medium amounts of dopamine. And your frontal lobe, the headband goes across the frontal lobe. There's 5 sensors, 2 that measure the reward center in your brain, literally. So when you improve on this headband, you know it. And I think that is really, really powerful for people. And I know people who are using it love seeing their graphs in that program. I teach you how to interpret the graphs. So I would encourage you to go there, because then AR, you'll see your brain improving.
Really quick, Conversational Realist says, does porn make an impact on cognitive ability, thinking skills, memory, and so on?
Yeah, big time. And if you are not experiencing that yet, run, don't walk to our programs, because this is what I shared with my original client, who I was glad to talk with. And I've shared this in the videos. Like, if you are not actively getting better, you are passively getting worse. That's facts, spitting straight facts there. So like, if you're not working on this, your cognitive ability is getting worse every time you consume porn, every time you flood your brain with dopamine. There's an A-B effect. Every time you go to the screen, the A effect is you feel good. The B effect is you've damaged your brain more. That damage is going to accumulate and you're going to feel worse. And then there'll be some day where you can't think as well as you used to. Your memory's off. You start doing weird and interesting things that you haven't done before. For the worst of people who are impacted, they know they can't work anymore. They're about to get fired because they've dropped the ball on major projects. They find themselves consuming porn at work consistently and frequently because they need a hit of dopamine just to get through the workday. So if those are things that are happening to you, you need to address this now, because you're passively getting worse unless you are actively getting better. You know, the way I talk about it is there is no horizontal feedback loop. There's just a downward spiral or an upward spiral. There is no horizontal spiral. So if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And, you know, that's why in my life, I feel that way too. That's why I'm always trying to get better so that I can avoid getting worse.
Somebody did ask about
thoughts?
yes, this is actually a wrap up. Somebody had asked about the September program. This is available for only a few more days. It's only $19.95 or $19.99. If you go to the Dr. Trish Leigh website and then click on Porn Brain Reboot, it is under the workshops tab. So $19.99. If you have a hard time finding it, you can always email me at info@drtrishleigh.com, and I'll be glad to send you the direct link. And I'll actually post it in the conversation here if you want to purchase it there.
Yeah, and I wanted to share some fun updates. So the website is updated. Check this out. And actually, I don't know if Jamie knows this. Just last night, I hired a new team member. So we are adding someone who, John is joining us, and he is going to help with all of our digital content. So we are hoping to bring you videos that are edited, that are, I don't know how much or right now they're not edited at all, but we're going to make it so that at least it's easier to find the pieces that you need to find, and that the videos are a little bit easier to consume, and start making some new different videos. So that is really cool to have some more support in this department, so that, we can bring you, I'm trying to make more videos for you and get them to you, but having help in doing that is going to be amazing. So he's going to start in a week and a half. So that is really cool. One thing, because I see a comment, is that the headband you can use on a tablet or a phone. It does not connect to the PC. So that is, if you don't have a phone or a tablet, that can be tricky. And we are still working on, for November, we've begun to work on it. We're going to work on it hard soon. Is for November, we are going to try an app for a No Porn November challenge. So we're getting that going, so that that'll be an easy way for us to all connect throughout November, so that I can give you support not only in videos, but we can have interaction and chats in a manageable way where we can all go, if anybody is up for that in November. So we'll keep you posted on that. But in the meantime, get the $20 program. It supports the cause and helps you out. Taffy, cold showers. I just made a video yesterday on cold showers, and yeah, it produces dopamine. And I don't know about vagal nerve. The vagal nerve is the biggest nerve, and it needs soothing. So when dopamine goes into the brain, it should help to calm. Your vagal nerve can be calm or stimulated, so it should be calming. Okay, I know that is funny, SM Hassan, that Jamie's becoming an expert in this subject. That's exactly right. Except for she has to start saying no fap instead of flap. We've talked about it before. She's like, yeah, it always comes out flap. I'm like, I know.
Oops.
Yeah, exactly. Oops. Okay, so thank you all for joining us. Next week is I don't do lives on the last week of the month because it's my week off to create, and I'm in creative mode. Actually, it's my bestie's birthday next Friday too. So I will be creating all week and then spending time with her in the mountains again, going back to the mountains. So join me in 2 weeks and we'll get a video and we'll get some themes going and come back, because I'm here for you. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. You can join us here, and I'm going to keep you grounded, keep you motivated, hopefully inspire you to make this change for yourself, because it creates this massive ripple effect in your life. And not only do the people in your life benefit, you benefit from the ripple effect. And hopefully the story of my original client, who he even said, he's like, I'm on fire right now. I'm on fire. Things are so good. I never thought they would be. And yeah, he's still working on pieces, but that can be what you have going on. So I am glad to be here and being part of it. Yeah, you take care. I hope everybody has an amazing weekend. Weather here is beautiful. I'm hoping to get a little chilling going and get some good stuff. What do you got going for the weekend, Jamie? Anything exciting?
Being outside. I'm
going
to soak up every bit of this.
I know, it's so lovely. I was looking up those dandelion farms that are around here. There's one in Apex near Cary, or not dandelion, sunflowers. Why would I go to
interesting.
a weed farm? But because I think it's sunflower season. They're only around for a little bit. Okay, thank you, everybody. We're going to bounce off. Remember, control your brain or it will control you. So stay the course in this journey, and you are stronger than you know. Remember that. You're stronger than you know. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Have a good one.
Bye, y'all.